Shalom, family. Hagar, an Egyptian handmaid to Sarai, wife of Abram. We know the story of Abraham, Sarah, and Hagar, but what do we know about Hagar? Where did she come from? How did she become to be a maidservant? Let's begin in Genesis, the 16th chapter. Genesis 16, 1 through 5. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go in unto my maid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And he went in unto Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said unto Abram, My wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. The Lord judge between me and thee. Genesis 16 and 15. And Hagar bare Abram a son. And Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. So Abraham was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. The classical biblical baby names book tells me that Ishmael is an ancestor of the Arab people. Again, Ishmael, language, cultural origin, Hebrew and Arabic. An ancestor of the Arab people. The Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary tells us an Ishmaelite is a descendant of Ishmael, the son of Abraham and Hagar, the 12 sons of Ishmael, and his Egyptian wife became princes and progenitors of as many tribes. They lived in camps in the desert of northern Arabia, although occasionally some of them settled down as the Nabateans. Mostly, however, they lived like Ishmael, a wild man of the desert. And also, like him, they were famous for their skill with the bow. Joseph was sold by his brothers to the Ishmaelites. The word is apparently used in the Old Testament in a wider sense, referring to the nomadic tribes of northern Arabia generally. All Arabs, following Muhammad's example, claim descent from Ishmael. The Ishmaelites were the progenitors of many tribes, such as the Nabateans, the Bedouins, the Saracens, the Moors, and Arabs of the Arabian desert. Let's just look at a couple of them. The McClintock Strong Biblical Cyclopedia says, Saracens, originally the name of an Arab tribe, then applied to the Bedouin, and later to all the Moorish or Mohammedan people who invaded Europe and against whom the Crusaders fought. The true derivation of the word was long a puzzle to philologers. Duquesne deduced it from Sarah, the wife of Abraham. So, the Ishmaelites took the name Saracens from the name of Sarah. The Webster's Dictionary of 1828 says Saracenic, pertaining to the Saracens, inhabitants of Arabia, so called from Sarah. a desert. While the Webster's Universal Dictionary of English Language of 1940 tells us a moor is black or dark, a native of the northern coast of Africa, called by the Romans from the color of the people, Mauritania, the country of dark complexion people, a native of Morocco, member of any of the African or Asian dark races adopting the Mohammedan religion. In history, a Saracen or an Arab, a Negro, a black. In Webster's New World College Dictionary, 5th edition expounds on Moor, a member of a Muslim people of mixed Arab and Berber descent living in Northwest Africa, a member of a group from this people that invaded and occupied Spain in the 8th century AD, Moorish. And finally, a dictionary of the English language, 1755, classic edition, says blackamoor, a man by nature of a black complexion, a Negro. It was a Moor who made a plea to the king on behalf of Jeremiah the prophet when he was thrown into a dungeon. Jeremiah 38, 7 through 10, from the Geneva Bible. Now, when Ebed-Melech, ye blackamoor, one of the eunuchs which was in the king's house, heard that they had put Jeremiah in the dungeon, then the king sat in the gate of Benjamin, and Ebed-Melech went out of the king's house and spake to the king, saying, My lord the king, these men have done evil in all that they have done to Jeremiah the prophet, whom they have cast into the dungeon, and he dieth for hunger in the place where he is, for there is no more bread in the city. Then the king commanded Ebed-Melech the blackamoor, saying, Take from hence 30 men with thee, and take Jeremiah the prophet out of the dungeon before he dies. In his 1930 book, The Arabs, the epic life story of a people who have left their deep impress on the world, author Bertram Thomas explains, the original inhabitants of Arabia, then according to Sir Arthur Keith, one of the world's greatest living anthropologists, who has made a study of Arab skeletal remains, ancient and modern, were not the familiar Arabs of our time, but a very much darker people. A proto-Negroid belt of mankind stretched across the ancient world from Africa to Malaya. This belt, by environmental and other evolutionary process, became in part transformed, giving rise to the Hamitic peoples of Africa, to the Dravidian peoples of India, and to an intermediate dark people inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula. In the course of time, two big migrations of fair-skinned peoples came from the north, one of them the Mongoloids, to break through and transform the dark belt of man beyond India, the other the Caucasoids, to drive a wedge between India and Africa. Bertram Thomas explicitly states the pure Arabs and the East Africans are indeed kith and kin. The word Arab simply means mixed. Strong's Concordance, H6151, says Arab, to mix, combine, mixed. The word Arab comes from the root word Ereb. Strong's H6154. Ereb, Arabia, mixture, mixed company, heterogeneous body attached to a people, to Israel, to Egyptians, mixed, interwoven. In the book, Semitic Languages, Outlines of a Comparative Grammar, 2nd edition, it reads, Semitic languages. In the Bible, the word Arav is closely associated with the word Erev, meaning a mix of people, which has identical spelling in unvoweled texts. Jeremiah 25 and 24 parallels kings of Arav with kings of the Erev that dwell in the wilderness. The account in 1 Kings 10 and 15, matching 2 Chronicles 9 and 14, is traditionally vowelized to read kings of the Erev. The people in question are understood to be the early Nabateans, who do indeed appear to have been a mix of different tribes. The medieval writer Ibn and Nadim in Kitab al-Faris derived the word Arab from a Syriac pun by Abraham on the same root. In his account, Abraham addresses Ishmael and calls him Urub, from Syriac Rob, which means mingle. It is from these admixtures that we find the phenotype of the people that we know as Arabs today. While documenting the historical presence and impact of Africans in Russia and Russian culture, in her aptly titled book, Africans in Russia, author Lily Golden reveals Tsarist officials frequently listed Negroes as Arabs and Jews. And finally, on this note, the Encyclopedia Britannica 9th edition says the indigenous peoples of Arabia, including the Arabs, are African peoples. Hagar, the Egyptian, is the matriarch of these people. So now, let's figure out, where did Hagar come from? Let's back up a little bit to Genesis, the 12th chapter. Genesis 12, 14 through 20. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh. And the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house, and he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and he-asses and manservants and maidservants and she-asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, She is my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore, behold your wife, take her and go your way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. The Talmud writes in Tractate Bereshit Rabbah 45. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says, Hagar was Pharaoh's daughter. When he saw the deeds on behalf of Sarah in his house, he took his daughter and gave her to him, saying, Better that my daughter be a maidservant in this house than a mistress in another house. This is what is written. She had an Egyptian handmaid whose name was Hagar. Ha Greek, this is your reward. Targum Jonathan on Genesis 16 says, "And Sarah said to Abram, all my affliction is from thee. Being secure that thou wouldest do me justice, I left the land and house of my father and came up with thee to a foreign land, and forasmuch as I was not able to become a mother, I set free my handmaid and gave her to lie in thy bosom. And she seeth that she had conceived, and my honor is despised before her. But now is my affliction manifest before the Lord, who will spread peace between me and thee. And the land shall be replenished from us, nor shall we need the help of the progeny of Hagar, the daughter of Pharaoh bar Nimrod, who threw thee into the furnace of fire." So Sarah said, Hagar is the daughter of Pharaoh bar Nimrod. Strong's H1247 says bar, Aramaic corresponding to Ben. So let's look at that again. Hagar, the daughter of Pharaoh ben Nimrod, the son of Nimrod. In the 1892 book, The Earth and Its Inhabitants, Volume 10, The Universal Geography, Northeast Africa, Elise Recluse, Ernest George Ravenstein, and Augustus Henry Keene documents, Hiram, a high priest of Ammon, was the reputed founder of this dynasty, talking about the 21st dynasty in Egypt, under which the capital was again shifted northwards to San. During this period, the country was for the first time invaded by the Assyrians under their king, Nerometh, in parentheses, Nimrod. So we see Nimrod invaded Egypt. In the 1879 book, A History of Egypt Under the Pharaohs, derived entirely from the monuments, author Heinrich Karl Bruss writes, when Egypt had thus become virtually a province of the Assyrian Empire, Shishang, the son of the great king Neromith, again, in parentheses, Nimrod, of whom we have just spoken, was made king. Hagar is the daughter of the Egyptian pharaoh Shishang, who is the son of Nimrod, making Hagar Nimrod's granddaughter. Now let's go to the Dead Sea Scrolls to get the story. Genesis Apocryphon from the Dead Sea Scrolls tells of the patriarchs in 1Q AP Gen. And I, Abram, dreamed a dream during the night of my entering the land of Egypt. I saw in my dream one cedar tree and one palm tree, a very beautiful one, and human figures came and tried to chop down and uproot the cedar in order to leave the palm by itself. But the palm restrained them when she said, "Do not chop down the cedar, for both of us are from one root." And the cedar was left alone. Thanks to the protection of the palm, it was not chopped down. I woke from my dream in the night and said to Sarah, my wife, I have just dreamed a dream, and I am afraid on account of this dream. And she said to me, tell me your dream that I might know it. And so I began to relate this dream to her, and I revealed to her the meaning of that dream. And I said, for they will seek to kill me, but you they will spare. this very favor which you must do for me in every place where we are to stay, say of me that he is my brother, and I will remain alive by your protection and survive thanks to you. They will try to remove you from me and to kill me. And Sarai wept over my words that night. And Pharaoh Zoan is actually a city of Egypt in the eastern Nile Delta. So Pharaoh Zoan, Sarai took Sarai to go to Zoan with me, for she was very careful with her person so that no one would see her. But after those 5 years, 3 men who were princes of Egypt came, and Pharaoh Zoan about my affairs and about my wife, and they presented me numerous gifts and asked me to teach them values, wisdom, and truth. So I read in their presence the book of the words of Enoch. I'm going to move further down in the text. During that night, I prayed and besought and implored, grieved, and with my tears streaming down, I said, praise are you, O God, most high, Lord of all the ages, for you are Lord and ruler over everything. You are the ruler over all the things of the earth in order to exercise judgment among all of them. And now I make an accusation to you, O Lord, against Pharaoh Zoan, the king of Egypt, because my wife was led away from me by force. Exercise judgment on him for me, and manifest your great power against him and against his entire household. May he, i.e. Pharaoh, not have the power to defile my wife for me tonight. Then they will know you, and, O my Lord, for you are Lord over all the kings of the earth. And I wept, and then I was silent. During that night, God Most High sent a pestilent spirit to him, i.e. the Pharaoh, in order to afflict him and every person in his household, an evil spirit, and it kept attacking him and every person in his household. He was unable to approach her, and indeed, he did not have sexual relations with her, and she remained with him for 2 years. At the end of 2 years, the affliction and scourging intensified and strengthened against him and against every person in his household. I'm going to move down to the conclusion. So the king summoned me and said to me, what have you done to me because of Sarai? You said to me, she is my sister, but she is your wife. I took her as a wife for myself. Lo, here is your wife. Lead her off, go, and depart from every city of Egypt. And now pray for me and for my family, and let this wicked spirit be exorcised from us. Then I prayed for him, that he might heal quickly. I laid my hands upon him, upon his head, and the affliction was removed from him, and the evil spirit was exorcised from him, and he recovered. The king arose and gave me on that day, numerous gifts, and the king swore to me with an oath that he had not molested her, and he returned Sarai to me. And the king gave her a large quantity of silver and gold, together with a large quantity of clothing of linen and purple, and also Hagar. So he restored her to me and appointed people to accompany me who would take me out of Egypt. And again, this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered in the Qumran caves in 1947 and was acquired by Israel in 1954. This is Tales of the Patriarch 1QAP Gen. And finally, even in the Islamic accounts, they hold to the understanding of Hagar coming from Pharaoh. Hadith 4:578. Abraham went to Sarah and said, O Sarah, there are no believers on the surface of the earth except you and I. This man asked me about you, and I have told him that you are my sister. So don't contradict my statement." The tyrant then called Sarah, and when she went to him, he tried to take hold of her with his hand, but his hand got stiff. He was confounded. He asked Sarah, "Pray to God for me, and I shall not harm you." Sarah asked God to cure him, and he got cured. He tried to take hold of her a second time, but his hand got as stiff or stiffer than before, and he was more confounded. He again requested Sarah, "Pray to God for me, and I will not harm you." Sarah asked God again, and he became right. He then called one of his guards, who had brought her, and said, "You have not brought me a human being, but have brought me a devil." The tyrant then ordered that she should be taken out and granted Hagar as a girl servant. Sarah came back to Abraham while he was praying. Abraham, gesturing with his hand, asked, "What has happened?" She replied, "Allah has spoiled the evil plot of the infidel or immoral person and gave me Hagar for service." That Hagar was your mother, O Benai, my Isama, i.e., the Arabs, the descendants of Ishmael, Hagar's son. Hagar was an Egyptian of royal stock, made to be a servant. Shalom.